But real interesting stuff on the Morning Roast with Bobby Marks, Mr. King of Capology in the NBA. And really all the key things, the questions we're asking, the things we're wondering about right now, they covered it all. So here's Bobby on where Klay could go, how long he could go there, and how much he would get to go there.
He's a 2-year guy. I'm on a 2-year contract. I think you can take the hardline stance if you're Golden State and say we're not bidding against anybody or we're not competing against anyone, or you can take the approach that some teams have done in the past where they're saying, we know that there's a limited market out there, but we still think this player has value and we still want to reward that player. So I think, and that's why I said, you have to be careful if you're Golden State here, because who's to say that Klay Thompson goes sign somewhere for $13 million? I wouldn't throw that out the window there. So listen, I think the best for him to probably maximize if he's looking for a big contract, it is probably in Golden State. It is probably somewhere between maybe $20 and $25 million. It's just a matter of if that's the direction he wants to go.
Okay, so Bobby has also, I think, reflected the market by changing his number from saying his skill set is now worth 30 in the NBA. He's now moved it down to 20 or 25. And somewhere in there, it sounds like he's suggesting that at some point in July, this whole thing could come full circle and end up right about where it was before the year started, which is, if the reports were true, a 2-year, $48 million offer. Could we just circle back and end up right there again with Klay back with the Warriors?
You could, and that would have to, be at the tail end of a long sequence of non-moves for Klay Thompson, and it just depends on what the market actually does and what the Warriors do. I think if the Warriors go out there and they try to get, and if they maybe get Paul George, or if they land a big boy, well, then Klay's number is going to go way, way down. And it's interesting hearing Bobby Marks on the Morning Roast this morning, because I'm flashing back to when he came on our show, and I don't know if you remember where it was, and I just looked it up. It was February 22nd of this year, and I'm looking at an aggregation. It was an aggregation sensation.
I bet it was.
Based on our show. From Yahoo Sports, Bobby Marks predicts a Jalen McDaniels-type deal for Klay Thompson. In a recent appearance on the Willard and Dibs show, ESPN's Bobby Marks shared his thoughts in the region of a $30 million per year deal. And, he said probably what you're looking at is Jalen McDaniels, who got 5 and 131, which is 30, it's about $30 million. It's about $28 million a year for that kind of a contract. And so he said you're probably looking at $30 million a year. And now he comes out this morning, and I'm not saying that he's backpedaling. He's reflecting what the market is.
The market's different than what we thought it was going to be.
Right,
no doubt.
and that's 4 months ago. So in the 4 months from when Klay, back in February, when Bobby thought that $30 million was going to be the neighborhood, and now we're in the neighborhood of $20 million, and Klay was offered $24 million reportedly 4 months before we even had Bobby Marks on. So you go from 24 up to 30, down to 20. My God, Klay.
And did you hear
what a roller coaster.
Did you hear what Bobby said at the very beginning, which is that the Warriors refuse to bid against themselves?
Right.
And I really think, again, I'm just guessing here, but it feels to me like here's the arc of how this all went. 2 years, 48 at the beginning of the year, he says no. Then we go through the year. He's frustrated most of the time. He's coming off the bench for parts of the time. He's meeting with Steve Kerr on a biweekly basis behind closed doors. Right? We know how the season goes, 0 for 10, off we go into the sunset. We get to this point where it's time to talk, and the Warriors are almost encouraging Klay. Like, Klay, you don't like what we're offering you? Well, go see what else is out there. And I think the Warriors are keenly aware that they're sitting there with a smoking jacket on being like, He's going to come back. He's going to come back because he's not going to find out there what he thinks he's going to find out there. But Klay's mad. Damn it. I need some more respect. There's going to be a statue of me one day out there, and I can't believe you guys are doing me like this. And you gave Draymond Green 4 years, and how could you do this? I'm going to unfollow you on Instagram. And the Warriors are like, he'll be back. And he might not be back, but their point is, we're betting you're not going to go out there and do anything better than 2 years and 48. And they're probably right.
And so that's why they're not bidding against themselves.
And here's Bobby Marks going, they're probably 2 years and 48. And if I heard him correctly, I think he just said Golden State might be one of the only places he could even get that. I don't even know if nobody else is going to put that kind of cash in front of Klay Thompson because everyone's terrified of the second apron. It's a down market, and nobody's out there looking to give 3 years to people who are approaching 35. So that's where we sit. And the more I think about this, we kind of set that fun over-under yesterday with our summit, Monday, July 8th. Go to 957thegame.com and register for your free spot right now and see us in Fremont. We can't wait to see you there. That over-under of is Klay's situation done by July 8th? I vote no.
You're taking the over.
I'm taking the over.
The over on July 8th at 5:57 p.m. when you ask Grandy, hey, Grandy, what do you got? And he says, oh, I'm going to play the summit back. And we say, oh, that's right, because the summit crushed from Fremont Bank. And you shoot your shot, and that's all we got. That's where the over-under sits. Monday, July 8th at Shoot Your Shot o'clock.
I put my $5 chip on the over.
I think that's the favorite. I agree.
I put it on the over.
Well, even if, and this is, I guess, not when it's signed and sealed, but when it's announced, because Shams could come out with it, or it could be a Woj bomb before that, and it may not be signed, pending a physical.
Well, no, I don't. I won't play that semantics game.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
I'm saying that we do the summit and no tweet has been sent. No report.
No Shams wow.
I mean,
no Woj bomb?
It doesn't count if there's I like Shams wow. That's funny.
Well, it used to be Shams wow, but now we know it's Shams. Although if he, whatever.
No, Grandy.
Thank you. If we're still going to do I yuck.
Yeah.
I think we can still do Shams wow.
Fair point. Grandy and Director of Sports Lucas, do either of you even know what Sham wow is? Do you know what that is?
Yes, of course.
I don't know.
You do. Lucas has no idea.
Knows what Sham wow is.
You know what Sham wow is?
Rest in peace to the legend.
Okay. All right.
You're just guessing.
Sometimes I know.
Whoever that guy's name was, he was great.
You do strike me as an up in the middle of the night type of a guy.
His
Lucas.
name was 100%. Shams Wowania. Shams Wow is what his name
Let's move on.
That would have been the ultimate. Anyway.
Whatever. Vince offers his name. And yes, rest in... I better Google it.
Yeah,
rest in.
You do.
Oh.
Why are you stopping to Google now? You've never done it before.
Yeah.
You just kill people on the radio all the time.
I know. Still with us.
Google it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm saying there isn't even a tweet yet by July 8th, and a tweet of Shams being like, Klay has drawn interest from Orlando. That doesn't count.
2 for your Shams.
That doesn't.
You tried.
Yeah. Podminsky used to be a Klay teammate. No, none of that counts. It has to be a Klay is in agreement with.
Yes, agreed.
And I said Podziemski. Thank you, Shams.
And you're taking the over. And I think the over is the safe bet. I would put the over at minus 160. The under is probably plus 140.
What if it breaks during the summit?
It better. That would be awesome.
Incredible. That'd be incredible. Okay.
And the incredible part would be who would break it, because you and Shasky and Bonte are all probably the most active on social media in that moment. Maybe Guru next.
Oh, not in a
Steiny
summit.
and I are completely.
I turn it off in a summit. There's too much going on. Can't be looking at the computer. Grandy's in my ear. He'll tell me if something breaks.
Grandy's amazing, and so is Lucas, Director of Sports.
I actually have my own game with Grandy. He doesn't even know that I play this. I will see.
Who gets it first?
Oh, my God. I will see when I see breaking news. I will see it, and if that tweet has like a 12S next to it, which means it was tweeted 12 seconds ago.
Yeah.
I'll hit my talk back and be like, Grandy, check Twitter. He's like, dude, I saw it 7 seconds ago. I don't even, you've got that thing. You embedded it in your brain somehow.
It's called turning tweet notifications on from all the news breakers.
Yeah,
so your phone buzzes every single second of the entire day, but you get all the news first.
Yeah, I'm not into it.
I'm not into it either.
That phone's already doing enough. I'm doing enough to hold all the texts off from you guys. Especially Dibs, who come in green, for crying out loud. I don't want more of this stuff.
And it really helps you. You don't get got by the fake accounts
that's a good
because
point.
you only get
point.
notifications from the official accounts.
That's a great point.
That's a good point, Grandy.
I actually was talking yesterday to our boss, Matt Nahigian, and the Director of Sports, Lucas Alexander. Well, we had a conference call. They called me.
Okay.
I didn't call them. They called me.
Liar.
And we talked about when you're off. And we talked about a game plan. And I said, you know what? What's really comforting to me, because I'm going to be in your chair, and when I'm in your chair especially, there's a lot going on. It's easy to be over here slapping it around, drinking my water. Dude, thinking about jokes. And I'm still happy about my 2 birds yesterday with Sue and Larry, but I was like, you know what's comforting is to have Grandy in that spot because the dude is like constantly on it. And I said, you and Grandy both are like, anything that breaks, you're on it. I don't have to be on that, and I don't want to be on that.
One of my favorite things, and we'll hit some more Bobby in just a second, but one of my favorite things is when Grandy hits the breaking news sounder, and the look on your face.
I got no idea.
I love it. Yeah, the listeners, Dibs never has any clue what we're about to say. It's just like, he's like one of you. He's like, oh boy, I can't wait. I wonder what they're going to tell me.
And usually it's awesome. Last week was like, oh.
No, that was the worst breaking news sounder of all time.
And I looked at your face and I was like, I mean, your face said that it wasn't something as pedestrian as, okay, Klay, he's a Magic's.
Yeah.
Or, and I know he can't be yet, but your face told me that it was something more than just like your garden variety. Oh, it looks like Keaton Wins gets scratched. Sorry, Keaton. I didn't mean to use
and for
like
those
that,
of you who don't know, Willie Mays passing away is what
dude,
anyway,
sorry.
Bobby Marks
Back to
on
Bobby.
The perception of Klay around the league.
I think it's just the ability to kind of accept the role where he is at this stage in his career. I mean, it's the ability to accept the role if maybe it changes during the course of the year, whether if he struggles or maybe that team, I think he would be perfect in Oklahoma City, but that's at probably 20 to 25 minutes a game. So I think that's the biggest thing is that when teams meet with him or have the opportunity to meet with him at the end of the week, it's about kind of accepting the role at this stage of his career.
Okay. So again, that's another important point. When we talk about Klay and there's money and there's respect, there's also role. And I think that's an interesting one because I think haven't we been playing with the concept for the last 6 months that the Warriors want Klay Thompson to basically be the sixth man. But boy, I bet there's some other teams out there that'll do $30 million a year and just put him there in the 2 or the 3 and let him sit out there in the corner and shoot threes. Maybe not. Maybe not. Again, we have gone with the unfollowing of Instagram. I think there's been a premise for better than a week now. We're assuming Klay's going to go. Now, flash to Monty Poole joining our show yesterday and saying, I think it's a 52% chance that Klay stays. And the market is dry, and nobody wants Klay as a starter. And keep building this all up. What does it mean right now? Not much, but I don't think it's a stretch to think about that free agency, just Klay's, taking a couple of weeks into July and the real possibility that he doesn't find what he's looking for out there. And does that bring him back to Golden State, pending what the Warriors do in the meantime? I think it's a real possibility.
For sure. And I do think that that's where your over-under on July 8th, the summit at Fremont Bank, which is 13 days from now, that becomes more of an over because if the team is willing to wait and if Klay's market is colder than he wants it to be, well, then you're going to have to wait. Maybe past July 8th and maybe you get to a point where, teams are finally sorting through what they really want to do, and he's nobody's plan A, and he's nobody's plan B, and he's a bunch of teams' plan C, and then you get to plan C-ville, which is probably after July 8th, and teams are like, well, geez, we're New York, and we missed out on Paul George, and we're the Warriors, and we missed out on KD and Paul George, and we're OKC, or we're Orlando, or whatever other team you want to think is out there, if it's OKC, or if it's San Antonio, or if it's Houston, or all these other teams that think that they might want a piece of Klay Thompson, but they want to do it at a bargain. Well, you get to July 8th, 9th, or 10th, then maybe the price goes down.
Bobby Marks on the roast earlier today, and we know there is reported interest from the Warriors in Paul George. Okay, so how would that work if the Warriors were to acquire him?
I don't see it. It's hard for me to see a scenario of going trade-wise when you have Klay still on your roster. I think that presents somewhat of a challenge here. But let's just say that if the trade presented itself at the end of the week and you were able to get a Paul George type player, Paul George is making $48, $49 million. you've got to get closer to around $40 million in salary. So you're certainly looking at Wiggins. You're certainly looking at maybe Peyton. You're certainly probably looking at at least one of your young guys, whether it be Moody and Kuminga. I think if you're the Clippers, you would certainly want Kuminga. So it's just about getting up to that $40 million number.
Okay, so he did not offer clarity in what I know my mind was waiting to hear. I wonder if some of you are the same. Is one of these guys gettable without giving up Kuminga? And he sort of was like, one of the young guys. The Clippers would want Kuminga. Okay,
yeah.
But would they get him? And one thing that I'm real focused on, and it's kind of part of what we talked about yesterday with the Kevin Durant and the Suns thing, we see names like Kevin Durant and Paul George, and I think the fallback position is, oh, wow, there's going to be a lot of competition for that guy, and they're going to demand the world. Why would any of those teams do that if they weren't getting Kuminga back? I think we overstate the position of the team that's letting the star player go or looking to trade him. They're not in a power spot. They're not in a spot to be making demands for budding 22-year-old NBA starters. I just like the Clippers. Like the Paul George trade idea is because the two sides can't come to an agreement. They don't want to keep him at the number that he wants. It's public as all hell. The whole world, if he opts into that final year, the whole world knows there's a trade coming. All of these things rip your value. All of them do. And so the Clippers would be in a spot where they sort of like kind of have to get rid of Paul George so that they can continue to operate. That's not the position where someone can walk in and demand the top young player on another team's roster, I don't think.
Yes, but the demand goes up based on how many teams want to rip that player from you. So, and I would imagine there are more than one team that want Paul George in this scenario where, it's going to be a sign and trade and you have a chance to get Paul George. I think because there are multiple teams that want that player, and I would imagine there are a number of teams that want Paul George, especially at that number. And I do know that Paul George wants a 4-year deal on top of that, so that complicates the move a little bit, and it also complicates, to your point, what you're going to have to give the Clippers, because the Clippers know that Paul George wants another deal. So if you want to acquire Paul George, you're going to have to probably give him a 3-year deal on top of the 1 year that he's going to opt into, and that's a lot of money if you're the Warriors and you're trying to stay out of that second apron. So it does mitigate a little bit what you have to give back, but also if there are multiple teams, and I would bet that there are 6 or 8 teams that want Paul George and can get Paul George, that drives the price up.
Now, what about Kuminga? Because there's always that discussion. We even talked to Monty Poole about it yesterday. We know the Warriors badly do not want to trade him, but nobody has been willing to come out and firmly say that's off the table. That's a non-starter. No, the door is always open. So the guys asked Bobby Marks, what is Kuminga's trade value across the league right now?
Yeah, they have it to the day before the start of the regular season, so you're looking at October 21st. He'll be restricted, so I think you have to have the mindset that if Kuminga puts together another good year and takes another step, it's probably going to cost you more than $30 million a year. I think that's probably realistic. What the market will be, the cap will increase for next year and the year after. So as the cap increases, so do salaries here. So yeah, I think certainly if Paul George ever became available and there's no way for him to get to a team like the Warriors without a trade, then he would be the first player that you would be looking for.
Okay, so again, this is probably the rub right now, I would argue, with all of these doors the Warriors are supposedly knocking on. At least if I were there, that's one thing I would be focused on. It's not just who can we get. I would love to say who can we get without giving up Jonathan Kuminga. I'm not saying Kuminga's 1,000% off the table, but I would certainly prefer to keep him. And so I wonder if those are the sort of pre-July conversations that are happening where the Warriors might be putting out feelers and offers that don't include Kuminga. Other teams are wanting to include Kuminga. And then you play the power and leverage game as you get closer to July 1st and kind of see where everything stands. And the hope is that the price comes down.
Yeah, the price could come down. It all depends on who else would want Paul George and what other teams are willing to offer. And I do think that if I'm the Clippers and I'm thinking about making a trade with the Warriors in particular, a team that is not only in my conference but in my division, it's a team that I don't necessarily want to help. I want to do everything I can. If I'm going to give you my best player or my second best player, whatever you think Paul George is, I want to make sure that I tax you. Otherwise, I might take a little bit less from someone else to get him out of the conference. There's that competitive part for me, as opposed to you're going to give Paul George to the Warriors and not get Kuminga.
Remember, though,
that's a non-starter for me.
This is the difference to me in a Kevin Durant conversation versus a Paul George conversation. Paul can have more control over where he gets traded because he can tell that other team that's acquiring him, I'm not signing a new deal with you.
Yep.
Right? And then there's no point. There's no point in even doing this. Kevin's still got 2 fully guaranteed years on his deal, so he's not playing basketball anymore if he doesn't report to an acquiring team. Paul George has all kinds of leverage and power because he can opt in, he can opt out, he can choose free agency. He's got all kinds of different ways he can go, and only 1 year left on his deal, even if he does opt in. So no team's going to acquire him unless they feel confident that Paul George is going to stay a while.
You would figure. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to do Kuminga and picks for a Paul George rental,
right?
If you're the Warriors.
Well, I don't think Paul George is going to, right. He's not going to do a rental. Like
he wants a deal.
Yeah.
And the word is he wants a 4-year deal, which would mean 3 years on top of him, refusing his player option, or, 3 years on top of the player option, and it's $48.8 million. So are the Warriors going to want to be a team that signs up for that? Because that's going to put you in that second apron neighborhood going forward, and that's something that they've been trying to avoid.